In today's video, I'm going to show you the difference between shooting with a brand new Canon R and shooting with a Canon EOS 450D, which is like ancient. This was my very first camera. This is the camera that I had when I was 21, I think. First starting out. Maybe I was 20. I was first starting out and I didn't know if photography was something that I wanted to really go into, but when I found out that I love photography, then I upgraded to my Canon EOS 5D Mark II. But at that moment, this camera was what got me started, what got me fueled, and what created my very first images, and some of them I still absolutely love to this day. Now for today's shoot, I went to the beach, and this is where I am right now. I'm actually soaking wet because part of the images that I took was in the water. But before going in the water, I was shooting with my model on the beach, and I'm going to show you guys some comparison shots between the Canon EOS R and the Canon EOS 450D, and just show you that you can actually, with a cheap camera, you can get this used. With a cheap camera, old camera, you can achieve amazing things. It's not going to do the same things that the full frame high-end camera is going to do, but it's going to get you started, and it's going to start creating some beautiful, beautiful portraits, and you can fuel your creativity that way. It's a great way of getting to know a camera and getting to know whether photography is something that you're into. So for part of today's session, I used my Canon 85mm 1.8 lens. Usually I shoot with my 50mm lens, but today I wanted to challenge myself a little bit further. And it was quite interesting because this camera is a crop frame and the Canon EOS R is a full frame. So the moment that I put on a new lens onto this, it's gonna magnify even more. Therefore, I had to move myself from like the moment I took portraits with the old camera and the moment I took portraits with the new camera, because this one got way in close. But it was a lot of fun to try, and I also shot some with my 50mm 1.4, which is my favorite go-to lens. Seriously, it is inexpensive and it's an incredible piece of glass that I highly recommend. Mine has lasted me, well, as long as this camera has, which is right about 11 years at this point, I think 10 or 11 years, and I wouldn't go without it. So with today's sessions, I were photographing a beautiful model, Summer, and she's a new model, but she has these gorgeous green eyes that I absolutely needed to capture. So we went to the beach and grabbed some shots among the rocks, and then later on I grabbed my 5D Mark II, old camera, and try to take some portraits in the water as well. Now for that shot, that's a part of the session, I did not have this one as well because I had my old camera in my underwater bag. And if you want to see how I have used this underwater bag before, go to my previous video on how I did my very first underwater photography session. But for today, we were above water and just kind of playing around with it. Unfortunately, by the time that we went into the water, tide was rolling in and there were suddenly waves, where when we started, there wasn't any, but what you gotta do. All in all, I tried to experiment a little bit. I used the exact same settings, or almost exact same settings on both cameras, and I tried the same angles, I tried the same poses to see if you can tell the difference between the two. And there's obviously going to be some quality difference between the images, but I bet you'll be surprised to see just how close you can come with an inexpensive camera. So there's no excuse not to get started. It's about getting to know your camera and getting to know the settings on your camera. Go away and from auto and shoot manual. Know your camera and really dive into it. There is no excuses. If you have a inexpensive DSLR camera, practice with it and see where it takes you, and see if photography is something that you want to do, and see if it's something that you want to invest in on a later date. And maybe one day you'll find that suddenly you have way too many cameras and that you're way too invested in your photography. For me, it ended up becoming my way of life, my livelihood, and I absolutely love every moment of it. So each of the shots I'm going to show you now are going to be taken with 2 different cameras, and I've found poses that are similar so you can see just which differences each camera has. Now we're going to play a little game. So I'm going to have the 2 images up next to each other, and then you can see if you can guess which one is the Canon EOS R and which one is the Canon 450D, and see if you can see the difference. Now obviously there was a few differences between the 2 cameras, and I must admit I found it so much harder to focus with my old camera. Obviously I'm not familiar with it anymore. I know how to set it correctly and I know how to use it, but there are a few things that was different from when I used my 2 other cameras, and I often find myself losing focus a few times, and it was harder getting those completely tack sharp images that I do get with my Canon EOS R and my Canon 5D Mark II. I'm surprised at how good quality images this camera still produces to this day, even though it's 11 years old. And I'm really happy that I did this test to see, and I think at some point I'm gonna also do a test between the Canon EOS R and the 5D Mark II, because those 2 cameras are both full frame and are a little close to each other in quality. This is definitely an entry-level camera. It is not high-end. It is not made for extensive professional shooting. It is an amateur camera, but you can still, with an amateur camera, create beautiful images, and it shouldn't hold you back. If this is what you can afford, and if this is what you start out with, this is what you're gonna have, and this is what's gonna help fuel your creativity until the day you want to invest in something bigger. Now, originally I also wanted to compare video on my 2 cameras until I remembered the fact that this camera doesn't have video. This was right before they started introducing video to the entry-level Canon cameras, but I still think it held up. And there's something to be said about the fact that it isn't as much the camera that needs to be the best of the best. That has to be the lenses. The glass that you put on your camera is going to determine a huge part of the outcome of your images. Now, if you also have an entry-level DSLR camera, there's nothing keeping you from going out there and starting to create your portfolio. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna have so much more content like this. I am constantly trying to create more and more and figuring out what exactly I can do to shoot videos that are super educational and good for you guys to see. Also, could you tell the difference between the Canon EOS 450D and the Canon EOS R? Let me know in the comments. Tell me if it surprised you that you can use a cheap camera to create beautiful portraits, or if I didn't have you fooled and you exactly knew which ones were the more expensive Canon EOS R. Until next time, have a beautiful day. Bye.